Hello everybody, my name's Ryan and I'm a driving instructor. Today, why is the North East missing motorways? So the question is, why is Newcastle, or the North East, missing motorways? It's not a direct question this, it was more about why is big cities like London got surrounded by motorways, or Manchester, or Liverpool, or Birmingham, why have they got big motorways around them? Even Sheffield and Leeds got motorways. And, well, anything this side of the A1, which is quite hard to describe, and I'll come back to zones later, but everything east of the A1, why is the major cities missing motorways? So that side of the A1, big cities, Norwich being a big one, into Essex, and also looking at things like why is Middlesbrough, a major urban area, missing a motorway? You could argue that Darlington's got the A1M around it, and you could argue about Durham having a motorway sort of near it, but it's still sort of 7 or 8 miles away from the city centre, which we expect motorways to be. But in Newcastle's case, or the North East's case, we've got this kind of dual carriageway with a hard shoulder affair. Alright, it's got 3 lanes in bits, I know it does, but mostly from Scotch Corner North, it's a glorified dual carriageway. It really is. We do have other roads in the area, the A19 being the other major one, the Sunderland bypass. But the question my pupil asked, why do we do driving tests on motorways here? Well, we don't, because there aren't any. But what they were referring to, of course, is things like urban expressways, big dual carriageways. They were talking about the A1 being an expressway, if you will. They were talking about potentially things like interstate style roads. Why don't we have any super wide 3-4 lane highways that run around the edge of Newcastle and all the way up to Scotland? Why did they forget? Well, the answer is quite long. I actually wrote something on Sabre roads quite a long time ago, about 15 years ago, about the development of roads in and around the North East. It's quite long. I'll put a link in about that, about what we wrote, and about pathetic motorways. Most of the information's on there, and the stuff that's going to be on this video is from that website. It's quite complicated. Basically, they plan lots of motorways around here. They planned lots and lots of them. In fact, they rerouted the A1 between 1922 and 1994. They rerouted it 5 times, going through the city, going through the Tyne tunnel, using Sunderland bypass, using the western approaches, using the western bypass. There was all sorts of different changes with the roads in and around the North East. But they never really built the motorways. You can't really call the town motorway a motorway. It's just a special road that you can do 50 miles an hour on, where you can't put power lines underneath it, for example. I had heard a rumour that they were actually going to delete the town motorway and just call it the 167. It would probably make sense, actually. But with the 167, a primary and secondary route videos and trunk road videos coming soon. With it being a primary route in that area, instead of having blue signs, having green signs, that means you could let all sorts of people onto it, included all sorts of bikes and things, and that's possibly why it's a motorway. I don't know, you could have a restriction on it. They do on some of the other bit of the 189 over there, says no cycles on it. So maybe it's just the way it's set up in the system and the way that it's been planned. So about these mythical non-built motorways, I found lots of things that have been interesting since we wrote these articles sort of 15 years ago. Things like the Sunderland bypass numbering and it going through the Tyne tunnel at the time, and where the A19 ran into South Shields. That was quite interesting. I always thought that the A19 was rerouted, and there was that post on the forum saying that when they built the A19 up through Shire Moor and on through up to Moor Farm and all the way around to junction 80 of the A1, when that was all built in the 1974, there was a guy that put a post on that he thought that that should have been a motorway. If we go down to Middlesbrough, then you'll see that part of that has been rebuilt recently, a little bit like the Western Bypass and the bit past the Angel, where they've gone from 2 lanes up to 3, and they've squeezed 3 lanes in there. Does the A19 need 3 lanes? Well, yeah, it does. Moor Farm needs rebuilding. That's supposed to happen in 2030. We'll see what happens there. But generally, when we look at all of these roads and all of these different connections, maybe they were supposed to be motorways in the first place and they didn't get built. Well, they didn't. Here's the pictures and here's the voiceover. After the war, the government considered upgrading all of the major A roads, A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, to a bigger freeway style experience. They looked at Germany's infrastructure following the war and realised that the major roads that linked everything together were of a highway or a motorway standard. The government looked at this and thought that they needed this kind of a plan. How would they upgrade all of the major A roads to a higher standard? Did they replace the original roads, like they currently do in Scotland, or did they want something a little bit different? Did they want brand new roads? When it came to it, they decided to add new roads. So they considered bypasses. The first ones being bypasses of Lancaster and Preston, which eventually became parts of the M6. They had another look at various things around the country. By 1954, this was pretty much set in stone that they were going to build this network of motorways, and they decided that they were going to complete them within the next 10 years, by 1964. Of course, the reality of that was it didn't actually end until now, or actually beyond now. Newcastle in the northeast, well, let's say the corner of Gateshead, didn't actually get linked to a direct motorway across the motorway network until 2018, with the addition of the upgrade to the A1M near Dishforth. In 1954, Newcastle, the 19th largest city by population in the UK, had grand designs. They wanted a bigger picture. They wanted control of their traffic. The A1 was a small road going over the Tyne Bridge at the time. It ran through the city centre, out the other side, and all the way up through Wide Open and out up into Morpeth and Morpeth town centre. This was deemed as a little bit unacceptable, so they considered building a Morpeth bypass, but they didn't know what they were going to do with it. They considered building a new motorway links on each side of the Tyne. When we look at the what could have been map, you can clearly see that there would have been a central motorway west to complement the central motorway east. The central motorway east was actually built in its entirety, but they didn't consider that what would happen after the traffic left that area, and so you've ended up with the 167, which is now massively congested. The other ideas that they had in 1954 included a motorway coast road, a felling crossing bridge. They considered a A69 motorway upgrade to Carlisle. They considered other avenues of motorways. They considered linking it up to this new idea of the A1 brackets M being linked into their city. Of course, only one part of this was ever built, the CME, as it was originally called, Central Motorway East. This then became just Central Motorway and eventually became Newcastle Motorway. It's had a number of different designations, with rerouting of the A1 following it 5 times. The Western Bypass around Newcastle was always designated as this. It always had the space to be built. It always had the space to be built as a major 3-lane plus hard shoulder motorway in this area. Of course, it didn't actually get built that way, and this road wasn't actually completed until 1991, almost 40 years after they were deciding on these plans. When we look back and we look at what could have been, there was also other plans and also other suggestions, especially by 1974, of building the Sunderland bypass. The Sunderland bypass would have taken over from the A19 and was designated a new number. The new number would have been carried through all the way up to the A1, possibly through a link much further north than it actually is. Well, I hope you like that little bit of insight in why there's no motorways in the northeast. There's a lot more to come from that, but if you did like what you saw, why not like and subscribe? So I hope you have a great weekend. Until next time, bye!